Welcome to Get Set Go Car Reviews. If you guys are new to this channel, I review cars, but I really like to geek out on specs and engineering. So if that's something you guys are interested, consider subscribing. Okay, and today I have a treat for you guys. Okay, today's a 2019 Alfa Romeo Giulia. I mean, just look at it. Has a lot of striking features, a lot of wow factors. This one is the very little brother to the Quadrifoglio, which is the engine-derived Ferrari 505 horsepower beating the M3s, C63S, and those monster of cars. Again, this is the little brother, but this is not to be mistaken. A lot of people say Ferrari derived, but this car is actually produced by the Ferrari team. This goes back to FCA and Ferrari being paired up. FCA, who owns Fiat, Chrysler, and Alfa, was a stakeholder in Ferrari. Now imagine that you build a car 2.5 years in and you're already taking on cars that have been in the same sector for decades and decades. When I was driving this car in Topanga and Malibu, I realized that there's no BMW that drives or even corners as well as this one. I was in some situations on some hairpins unexpectedly, but this car did a really good job at correcting my amateur driving. Now, this car is a base model, but let me tell you guys something. The things I was able to do in the Malibu Canyons just a moment ago brought me to absolute tears of joy. This car is just capable, again, of so much more. Let's get right into spec talk. This engine here produces 280 horsepower. It's a 2.0 liter turbocharged inline four, which makes this car actually quite special for what it is. It produces 305 horsepower. It goes 0 to 60 in 5.7 seconds, has a top speed of 55 miles an hour. And again, like I said, this car is a base model, but don't let that confuse you for basic amount of fun, because this car does pack a punch. So let's start with its striking features, okay? That's the signature grille you get in every single Alfa Romeo across all their lineup. You see all these three vents right here. These are all functional. My favorite thing about this car is the lines. It looks like everything is scratched up at the front and then it spreads out throughout the car. And for that exact reason, it actually has a drag coefficient of 0.25. Again, this car spent 90% of its time in a Ferrari wind tunnel. I mean, so that should tell you something there. It's really hard to compare this with any other car because it just has a look all in its own. You can't compare this car. You can't confuse it with a Lexus IS. You can't confuse it with a BMW. When you see this car, either you question it, what the hell is that? Or you know exactly what this is. What I've also noticed about this car is how well it was built. Everything shuts fine. It has a really quiet cabin, but really the fit and finish of this car, there's no major gaps or really any gaps that don't match each other. Even the line that comes across the door right here also followed through with the rocker panel. You guys see how well sculpted this car is. Alfa Romeo actually stopped selling here in the US back in 1992 because they just had a bad rep. They were breaking down all the time. And a lot of people with really good memory still remember that and would prefer not to buy one because of this reason. When driving, this car maintained the revs, so it's not unpredictable. It didn't drop significantly. You know, if you let off the gas, it's going to maintain that RPM throughout that corner, so you can just gun it again. And this car here has a shift speed of 100 milliseconds. ZF transmissions are built in Germany. They've sold over 3.5 million units back in 2017. And you see them in Aston Martin, Rolls-Royce Phantoms, Toyota Supras, and just so many other cars because it's so much lighter and so much quicker. And for that reason, actually, it has even replaced some dual clutch transmission. Okay, that's enough of the outside. Let's hop inside, let's talk some features, and then let's go for a drive. Let's start her up. Okay, so in the cockpit, look how nice and minimalistic this car looks. It has a very sleek design. And one feature to point out in particular is the start-stop engine feature right here on the steering wheel, just like that Ferrari. Going into the instrument cluster, what you see is everything's very symmetrical. On this side, you get the fuel. Opposite side, you get the temperature of the engine. In the middle, you have a digital speedometer with also a tachometer on the right side and the revs over on the left side. Now, what you guys see on the left side is that this car revs out at 5,500 RPM. And what I've noticed is that the power band for this car is between 2,500 to 4,000. Very minimalistic style. tri-spoke steering wheel. Over on this side, you get the cruise controls. Over on this side, you have all the Bluetooth settings, including volume, hang up, voice activation, and skipping through the tracks. Over on this side, here you get the infotainment system. Again, nice and sleek. Look how modern, contemporary that looks right there. In addition, what you see here is some vents, options to turn off the vents and close them. Down here, you have the dual climate controls. Right in the center is to control the speed. Again, dual climate controls on each side. Here what you get is a place to set your phone. It's quite soft touch. I wouldn't put my phone on here if I didn't have a case on it, so that's something to consider. You have one power cord right here, power outlet. Here you get two cup holders. Here, of course, pushes over to the left, you get your manual mode. Right down here is what you have. What you have is called DNA. Okay, now what does that mean, DNA? So DNA is your different driving modes, okay? A is your eco mode, N is your natural mode, and D is the dynamic mode, which is, again, much more race oriented. So you get this here, see. N, again, natural mode, dynamic mode, and A. What I want you guys to realize about these settings is that there's no gimmick here. When I was driving, I noticed that the steering wheel was really loose, but that's because I was in natural mode. I put it on dynamic mode, problem solved. And the same thing, I pressed the gas and the throttle response wasn't as accurate. You know, there was a bit of delay. Again, I noticed I was in natural mode, so I put it on dynamic mode, solved that problem as well. So what I want to say is that these features do make a difference in the way the steering wheel feels. Again, dynamic makes the steering wheel a lot more heavy, while A makes it a little bit softer, makes it really light, actually. This car is really well at absorbing all the road vibrations and the bumps. I haven't looked into the suspension, but I could almost guarantee that it has a double wishbone suspension paired with struts. And I'm gonna find out, do my fact finding, or maybe you guys can throw it in the comment section, let me know. Is that right? Is that the suspension setup? Double wishbone with struts? You know, the thing I was noticing about this car as I was driving through the city is how quiet the interior cabin is. Now that's a plus up until it isn't. And those times when it isn't is when the ambulance is around, there's police sirens, and there's all that stuff. Because again, this car is very quiet on the inside. You're not able to hear the sirens or anything, especially when you have even like a little bit of music playing. Talking about quiet, the exhaust, come on, you know I was gonna go there. The exhaust is rather quiet. I would have liked to see more beefier sound, even if it's slightly artificial. Even if it was slightly artificial, you know what I mean? But again, no complaints as far as performance. You know, although first gear tends to lag a little bit, but I mean, it's to be expected. You're in first gear, right? Not going so fast, you know? But once you get onto second and those gears above, man, does this thing start kicking. And it kicks, I'm telling you, this car kicks. Also, the other shortcoming for me was the backup camera. Now the backup camera, I mean, it's functional, it works, right? But it's this big and it's all scrunched together. It's actually quite hard to decipher. Even though it has a lane trajectory, I'd say for a car that's $40,000, I expected a much better backup camera. Okay, you see this? It doesn't turn off until you actually bring this up just a little bit. See that? Another way to go around this is by tapping it. The only catch is that it only clicks for about 3 to 4 times. So the real solution, and the only time it actually comes off by itself, is if you're doing a turn like this, where the steering wheel actually turns all the way to completion, and then it shuts off itself. Now as I'm sitting in traffic, what I've noticed is that the car shuts off, and then the engine turns back on. The only catch I have with that is, first off, it's annoying, and second off, it actually tends to lock up the steering wheel. So I'm not sure, maybe you guys can help me in the comments section to let me know, is there any way around it? Is there an option? Is there a way to turn off the start and stop engine feature? Again, let me know. So enough of the road test review. Here's a clip of me driving in the canyons. with the GoPro in my hand, okay? Check it out. I had forgotten my suction cup, so here we are taking the drive up Topanga Canyon in Malibu. Wow, what a gorgeous day to be driving, and what a gorgeous car to be taking on a road like this. Let me tell you guys something, man. This car is so nimble. It drives incredibly well. Feels like it's planted. I was hoping for a little bit more bolster in the seats, I guess because this one's a base model. It doesn't have as much bolster as I was looking at in other reviews. And in addition, I was actually surprised that this one didn't have paddle shifters. And I come to realize that's actually part of a package that apparently this car doesn't have. This one is about as base as this car can get. This one should be around the $38,000 price range. But with the rims, I wouldn't think so. I mean, I think those are the $3,000 set of rims, which again feel very nice. There were some parts though, when I was driving that felt like, what did it feel like? Brakes are good, by the way. There were some parts of during the drive that felt like there was a lot of tram lining. You know, so if the road was a little bit tilted, the car kind of steer you in that direction. There's a little bit of bump steer too, similar to the Alfa Romeo 4C. You know, I thought it was at one point the rims, but I've also come to realize that it's also part of the suspension setup. And I heard, I mean, the wheels obviously do have something to do with it, but not as much as the suspension does. So again, that's something to look into when purchasing this car. It's a lot of tram lining, there's a lot of bump steer. Okay guys, to conclude my review of the 2019 Alfa Romeo Giulia, I gotta say, overall, this is a car I'd consider driving, especially for day-to-day driving, especially on the weekends. If something like more power is something you guys want, I'd really highly recommend the Quadrifoglio. Quadrifoglio obviously has almost double the horsepower and overall better track performance. And considering myself quite a regular guy, this is a car again that I'd consider purchasing, especially with some of the lease again being $300 to $350 a month. Again, this is a car I'd personally consider driving. If there's something I might have missed, I'd really encourage you guys to drop it down into the comment section below. I'm always open to new feedback or anybody else adding onto my own videos. I must have missed a lot of stuff. So again, throw it in the comment sections. What do you guys think? Is this a car you guys would drive? Is there any performance features you guys want to add? Again, drop it down to the comment section. I really appreciate you guys sticking this far into the video. You guys are the real VIP. And until next time, guys, take care.